the first topic that we have to bring up is it's an annual tradition in this country of ours that the first week that they release the college football playoff rankings or
Any
any
tradition since 2014, I think,
yeah.
since they started doing since they started releasing the playoff rankings.
Well, but arguing about who should be ranked where that's been forever in college football.
It heats up. It heats up, especially in November, because you're getting close to the end of the year. So
yeah. So my whole life has been this: college football is a sport that everybody complains about. Why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? No matter what happens, nobody's happy because at the end of the day, it is a bit of a subjective poll, and the crazy part to me is that the system's actually gotten better over time, but yet. Everybody, it's still, this is a sham, this is a joke, this is terrible, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So this is my overall point. Obviously,
for people who don't remember, so what were the first four teams? It was Georgia 1,
right? Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Michigan State 3, Oregon 4, Ohio State 5, and Cincinnati was 6.
Okay. Which you know what I don't really have. I mean, I think you could maybe you could make a case that some of those maybe you move one, you switch some stuff, but for the most part, I mean that's pretty accurate. Georgia, yeah, they're probably the best team right now. Alabama, they haven't looked as good as last year, but they've basically beaten everybody except Texas A&M, and
right.
So yeah, I mean it's kind of in Oregon. They have that win over Ohio State. They struggled a little bit with Washington yesterday, but they still ended up winning. But and then Michigan State, they had that win over Michigan. So,
Yeah. So obviously the since last season when Cincinnati played well, I feel like there's been this rush for the sports media. They've got to get Cincinnati in there. And it's some kind of travesty or, disaster that they haven't
earned their way in. They deserve to be there,
Right.
Which is just, if you look at their schedule, and again, they played Tulsa yesterday. They barely won,
right?
So
yeah. So all right. So this is my overall point here, guys. Overall, this is everything that I'm going to be saying after this is going to lead back to this. Cincinnati fans and all the sports media who wants them to be in, relax, okay. Stop whining. Stop acting like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in your life, and it's a damage to college football. Okay? Everything's going to be fine. There's plenty of time left to go. Okay? Cincinnati, you can still get in. Like, I mean, if anybody watched the games yesterday, Michigan, you already a team that was ahead of you lost.
That's what I was saying before. It's basically, look, guys, everybody freaks out, and it's like, guys, there's still several games to go. Like, you think this is going to be it's going to be this way for the next month? No, teams are going to lose. This is what always happens. This is what's been happening going back to the BCS. Like, this is what happens. Somebody's going to lose. So just like you said, Michigan State, they just lost after they had a huge win against Michigan. They lost to Purdue. So, and Purdue's like, I don't know, 5 and now they're like
6-3
or something. Yeah. So they're not that great. So.
Yeah. I mean, look, and by the way, everybody except Georgia, everybody struggled yesterday. Alabama had to hang on to beat LSU at home.
LSU's not good.
Right. Ohio State was in a tough battle with Nebraska. Oregon was playing in a driving rainstorm and had hard time with Washington. Like, this is like to think that, that they have no chance. So that was one of the things that came out that really bothered me right away was that, well, they didn't get in the top 4. Well, forget it. Then they're never going to get in.
Well, and it's like just so people realize, what's your kind of their path to getting in? Because it could happen. I mean, you need some of these other teams to lose, but theoretically, what do you think would be the path for Cincinnati to get even to just number 4 in the rankings?
Well, I mean, the easiest thing would be Georgia beating Alabama. Okay. Now, again, this is one of my other points is
does Georgia play Alabama in the regular season, or was this be in the SEC?
They would play in the SEC championship game. Yes. Okay. So, I mean, so if you think about it, Michigan State lost, so Cincinnati's probably going to be 5th in this week's rankings. So they're probably going to be one spot out. Okay. Oregon has really struggled. They have a really bad loss to Stanford.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to play Utah in the regular season, and then they probably have to play Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. So they got to play Utah twice. And
Yeah.
I'm not feeling, I don't feel like if I'm a Oregon fan, I don't feel real good about my team finishing the season without losing.
Yeah,
So,
because if they get a second loss, like forget it. Because of that Stanford loss, like I just, Ohio State will jump ahead because a lot of people already think that Ohio State's better than them. I mean, granted, Ohio State got the ball run all over them by Oregon, but people think in the end Ohio State's better than them, and they may be right,
well,
But yeah, Oregon, they can't have another loss because
right, and Ohio State could lose to Michigan State. They could lose to Michigan.
Michigan State just lost to Purdue, but Michigan State did beat Michigan. So, and Ohio State has struggled this year. They haven't looked as good.
Right. And by the way, you know who Purdue plays next week?
Who?
Ohio State. So they've already beaten two teams in the top three. So this is not a joke. So all right. So I'm just gonna go through a couple things. So I just feel like the sports media is just the amount of outrage and the whining about what happened to Cincinnati in the playoff is completely insane. So I was. I don't know what's wrong with me. I went on Twitter, and I was looking at what some prominent people in the sports media were saying. So there was a tweet by Colin Cowherd that basically said, according to Vegas, that Georgia would be a 15-point favorite over Michigan State, and Alabama would be a 17-point, something like that. They would be huge favorites if they played Michigan State or Cincinnati or Oregon, whatever. And then there was a response from Danny Cannell, who formerly of ESPN, played quarterback at Florida State. Now I think he's on a radio show every day. And he basically said, you mean like Alabama was a 19.5-point favorite over Texas A&M and they lost? All right. So the point is, my point here is that, no, point spreads, we don't decide who should be higher in the rankings based on the point spread in Vegas. That's not how we decide it.
That argument, that's a ridiculous. We've hammered on that a little bit with like Nick Wright saying the Chiefs were still favored by Vegas. It's like that doesn't mean that they're the better team. They're just trying to play the line so they can get people to bet on both sides. Like, guys, like seriously.
Well, the thing is, so I look at it as point spreads are a tool. We're not saying on a given your argument for Cincinnati can't be, well, on a given day they might be able to beat this team. That's not how this works, okay? Yeah. Of course, it's a given. On any given day, anybody can beat anybody. We've all seen Hoosiers. That's not the point, okay? The point is that Cincinnati's schedule, they don't have to play LSU and Auburn and Texas A&M and all of these teams that Alabama has to play.
One game.
Right.
And then you can kind of have a break for a few games. Like so for instance, we can criticize Alabama because, they struggle with LSU, but they're playing in the SEC. Those are full stadiums. Like they've got, they're probably playing teams every week that at least have a few NFL players on them. So it's a totally different thing. And by the way, we get into this thing. I don't want to rip on Cincinnati. You've won all your games. Like, good for you. You guys worked your ass off. Great job. You're having a great season. Like, can we stop? We've got to stop focusing everything on the end of the year.
Yeah. So I really objected to that. I think, yes, we can look at point spreads to see who's better than who, because point spreads are based on who has better players. Yes, there is a little bit of, public money coming in on certain teams. I get that. But it's just, to me, it's a general tool that we can use. It's one thing to be Cincinnati and you have your one big game against Notre Dame and you're using that as your measuring stick. And the other thing was they're acting like, oh, well, Cincinnati, Notre Dame was ranked 10th. Well, Cincinnati's win is way better than any Alabama's wins. Okay, slow down. Okay, Alabama beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss is 16th. They beat them by 20, 30 points. So we've decided we're picking and choosing what counts and what doesn't, right? So this
Right.
goes back to my other point was that all these definitive statements that people are making about the rankings. Okay. Oh, well, Cincinnati's sixth. Well, they'll never be able to move up because their strength of schedule gets worse. Okay. Well, I just told you they're probably going to move up one spot this week, if not more by the end of the season. And the top four is probably not going to be the same top four that finishes the season.
I kind of think Oregon's not going to be there.
Right.
Here,
Right.
Michigan State's going to move down now because they just lost. So yeah, I mean, and things could change after that. Alabama could maybe lose. Alabama's kind of struggled this year. They lost a bunch of players to the NFL last year. They're not the same team, so they could have some more close games. And I mean, a fumble happens or something, and then that totally changes everything. So people need to kind of,
Yeah, and honestly, I'm actually impressed with the committee for ranking Cincinnati as high as they did. They put them over two undefeated Power 5 teams. They put them over Oklahoma and Wake Forest. Okay? Yeah, Michigan has a loss. They're right behind them. So there's three Power 5 teams that they're ahead of. So to me, it's a bit insane that we're all going nuts that they're sixth and not fourth. It's like, are you kidding me?
Well, people need to what I don't understand is how people don't look in the NFL. It's pretty much a level playing field, right? The talent level usually between most of the teams, there aren't these. It's not like in college where it's like this team has this much talent and this team way down here. In the NFL, it's much closer. There's some teams that are a little bit more talented than the other, but it's pretty close. In college, I mean, different conferences. It's not like it's a different sport, but it's a different. It's like when I used to play wheelchair rugby, right? And we would play there's like two divisions, I think, and we were Division 2, and you'd play top teams in Division 2, and it's like, wow, they're way better than us. And then you play some team in Division 1, and it's like you're playing a team in a different sport. They have way more speed, they have way more skill, they have a much better idea what they're doing. The coaching's better. It's just a whole. And in college football, it's even more so.
Well,
So people go, well, they're undefeated. It's like, yeah, but it's different when you're playing in, what are they playing, the MAC or the
American, yeah.
American Athletic? It's a totally different thing, so people need, it's not that they're ripping on anybody. I mean, they ranked them sixth, for Christ's sake. It's not like they're saying that everything they accomplished means nothing.
Yeah, I think I think this is, and the thing is, the way this year is, where there's no dominant team, this is not like last year, where there were three dominant teams and we knew who they were, and there really wasn't a discussion about anything else. Yeah. Georgia is fantastic has been fantastic every week, but their offense is really pedestrian.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
So they have a flaw, and then Alabama and Ohio State, they've been up and down.
Yeah,
they haven't looked good. They've really struggled. They've had games where they've really struggled this season. So if there's any year where Cincinnati, you have a shot here. This is, the fact that you're playing substandard schedules and you're struggling with teams with losing records and you still have a shot is amazing. So yeah. I think I agree with you. I think Oregon would be fortunate to finish their schedule, without losing a game. And then
they're so reliant on running the ball, and even with their quarterback. I'm watching the Stanford game, and the announcers are going, "Yeah, you don't want the quarterback for Oregon throwing the ball too much." I'm like, okay, that doesn't bode well if you get into a really tight game and you really need to throw the ball. So yeah, and the fact that they lost to Stanford, I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's a bad loss. But the other problem Cincinnati's going to have is, let's say they get into the top four, is Oklahoma is behind them, and they have their
the problem right there.
They have their 3 or 4 biggest games in front of them, and so that's the issue to me, is that I could see a scenario where Cincinnati ends up in the top 4 before the championship games, and then Oklahoma jumps in front of them.
So so undefeated Cincinnati, would you put them over one-loss Oklahoma?
I think the committee would, because of the way Oklahoma has looked this year, where they haven't really played a good game. They played. Remember, they were down by 18 to Texas in the second half. They had to come back to win. They beat Nebraska by 7. They really have not looked good. Now, when they switched quarterbacks, it kind of changed a little bit. And they were off this week, but last week they played Texas Tech and blew them out. So maybe they're starting to get it together. And they have to play Baylor and Oklahoma State and Iowa State, which are 3 ranked teams. So
Okay.
if they, like I said, if they start to look like that and start blowing them out, while Cincinnati is struggling with UCF and SMU,
Yeah,
and
then you're kind of
then they have a problem. So that being said, Cincinnati and the fans and the media, relax, play better,
Yeah.
okay? Keep trying to kick butt, keep trying to play better every week, and you've still got a shot. So